Imagine this. You wake up in a room filled with mirrors. Every surface reflects you, not as you are, but as others see you. One mirror shows the version that smiled for yesterday's Instagram story. Another replays the clever tweet you posted last week. One glows with the filtered photo that earned hundreds of likes. In each, your reflection is curated, polished, optimized, but something feels wrong. You stare at the glass, trying to remember when you last saw yourself, not through the eyes of an algorithm, but as you are. And then it hits you. You're no longer living your life for yourself. You're living to be seen. The mirror has become a stage and your identity a performance. Now, what if that room of mirrors isn't a dream? What if you're already inside it? Some addictions leave scars. Others leave silence. Social media leaves something stranger, a simulation of connection so convincing, we forget what it means to be truly alone, or truly real. We scroll, we swipe, we like. Not because we're curious, but because we're restless. Not because we're connected, but because we're afraid to disconnect. Each notification, each red dot, is a tiny promise of meaning. A dopamine hit disguised as relevance. A moment of attention mistaken for love. But here's the paradox. The more connected we are online, the more disconnected we feel inside. The more we try to be seen, the more invisible we become to ourselves. You begin your day reaching for your phone before your thoughts have even woken up. You don't check in with your body. You don't reflect on your dreams. Instead, you check who saw your story. You dive into a world built not on presence but performance. You're not living, you're uploading. And it feels normal. Everyone does it. But have you ever stopped to wonder, why does it feel so hard to stop? There's a quiet desperation buried in our collective scrolling. We numb discomfort with distraction. We escape boredom, not with creativity, but with curated consumption. The real tragedy isn't that we're addicted. It's that we no longer recognize it as addiction. Ask yourself, when was the last time you sat in silence without reaching for a screen? When was the last time you felt something deeply and didn't post about it? When was the last time you did something beautiful and didn't tell anyone? Now imagine this. A stranger halfway across the world dies in a tragic accident. You see it, 3 seconds, a trending video, tragic music swelling behind it. You react, maybe even cry. Then you scroll on. Cat video, a meme, a selfie, a reel of a couple dancing. The moment disappears like mist. And you forget. What does that do to a soul, to feel so much so quickly and then nothing? What happens when reality becomes disposable like content? This isn't just a bad habit. This is something deeper, something spiritual, existential, a fracture in the way we experience time, selfhood, and meaning. The scrolling never stops because the hunger it feeds is endless. And maybe that's the point. Social media wasn't designed to make you whole. It was designed to make you addicted. The goal isn't your happiness. The goal is your attention. And your attention is being harvested not just for ads, but for influence, identity, and control. You might think you're choosing what to watch, but what if you're being watched while you choose? Every like is a data point. Every pause is a signal. The algorithm knows your fears, your fantasies, your triggers, perhaps better than you do. And it uses them, not to enlighten you, not to free you, but to keep you here, scrolling, engaged, addicted. Ask yourself again, how much of your life are you actually living? How much of it is spent reacting to pixels on a screen, chasing relevance, validation, or escape? Now imagine a different kind of mirror. One that doesn't show what others think of you. One that shows who you become. Would you look? Would you like what you see? Or would you keep scrolling? Because here's the truth. Addiction isn't always about what you crave. Sometimes it's about what you fear to face. And so the question isn't, is social media dangerous? The question is, what is it doing to your soul while you're not paying attention? And what if the real cost isn't your time, but yourself? Why can't we stop scrolling, even when it makes us anxious, restless, and empty? Why does a tiny screen feel more powerful than our own will? The answer lies deeper than we think. Beyond dopamine and screen time. Beyond tech companies and algorithms. It lives in the shadows of our own psyche. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Social media has become the modern unconscious, a digital shadowland where our hidden fears, desires, and insecurities roam freely, but invisibly. We tell ourselves we're using social media to connect, relax, stay informed. But what if the real reason we use it is because we're terrified of facing the void? The silence? The raw discomfort of being alone with ourselves? Because silence reveals truth, and most people are not ready for that. Let's dig deeper. Why do we post? Why do we crave likes, views, validation? Because deep down, many of us are searching for proof that we exist, that we matter, that we are seen. Jean-Paul Sartre called this the look of the other. The idea that we become fully aware of ourselves only when we are being observed. That our identity is, in part, constructed through the gaze of others. Social media turned that philosophical observation into a full-time reality. We no longer just live, we perform. Constantly, endlessly, for an invisible audience. And this performance is exhausting. But addiction isn't always about pleasure. Sometimes it's about avoidance. Arthur Schopenhauer believed human suffering stemmed from an insatiable will, a deep, blind striving for more that can never be fulfilled. In the age of social media, that will is fed with endless comparison. Someone is always richer, more attractive, more successful, more together. And so, we scroll not to find peace, but to keep our pain just bearable. It's a digital sedative for an existential wound. Let's talk about shadow work. Jung believed that within every human being exists a shadow, the part of ourselves we repress, deny, or disown. The anger we hide, the shame we bury, the loneliness we pretend isn't there. In a healthy life, we confront the shadow, integrate it, heal through it. But what happens when we distract from it instead? Social media doesn't just distract you from your shadow. It feeds it, your envy, your insecurity, your rage, your narcissism, all mirrored back at you in curated perfection. And it's easy to miss because it feels so normal. You feel like you're just catching up. But you're really comparing your behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel. You think you're entertained, but you're actually numbing your existential boredom, the kind of boredom that leads to creativity, reflection, and truth. And without even realizing it, you become addicted to your own avoidance. Aldous Huxley warned us of this. In Brave New World, he envisioned a society not ruled by tyranny but by pleasure. A world where people are so entertained, so numbed, that they lose the capacity to rebel. A really efficient totalitarian state, he wrote, would be one in which the all-powerful executive controls a population of slaves who do not have to be coerced because they love their servitude. Does that sound familiar? Social media doesn't need to force you. It seduces you, with convenience, with novelty, with validation. And in return, it gets your time, your mind, your data, your identity. But the most dangerous part of all? We're not just users of social media anymore. We've become the product. Every scroll, every click, every pause is monetized. Your attention is bought and sold in the marketplace of manipulation. And you think you're just browsing. Gabor Mate, a physician who studied addiction for decades, once said, "The question is not why the addiction, but why the pain?" So let's ask it honestly. What pain are we avoiding? Is it the pain of loneliness? Of meaninglessness? Of not knowing who we are without an audience? Or maybe it's the fear of missing out. On what? A viral trend? A stranger's approval? Or the fear of being forgotten in a world that forgets everything in 15 seconds? Let's go deeper still. In ancient philosophy, the Greeks warned of aesthesia, a spiritual apathy, a deep existential boredom that makes life feel hollow. Not sadness, not anger, just a deadening detachment from meaning. In modern times, we renamed it doom scrolling. We fill the void with noise, hoping the silence won't catch up to us. But here's the hidden truth. Social media addiction isn't about phones or apps. It's about the soul's quiet scream for depth in a world addicted to surface. And the more we feed that surface, the likes, the trends, the updates, the more we starve the soul. This is the root of the problem. Not just distraction, not just dopamine, but a spiritual displacement. We have outsourced our attention to algorithms, our identity to avatars, our relationships to screens, and our meaning to metrics. And we wonder why we feel empty. But this isn't the end of the story. There's something even more terrifying and liberating that we haven't explored yet. What happens when this addiction is no longer invisible? What happens when the consequences begin to show? What if it's already too late for some? Or what if the realization itself is the first crack in the glass? The next section reveals what's behind that crack. the consequences we don't want to admit, the price we're already paying. And what happens if we never break free? You thought the cost was just time. A few hours lost to mindless scrolling. A few sleepless nights spent staring at glowing rectangles. You thought you were in control. But addiction, real addiction, is never just about how much you use something. It's about what it does to you when you do. It's about who you become when you don't. And the consequences of social media addiction are not loud. They don't scream. They whisper. They whisper in your inability to focus for more than a few minutes, in your restlessness when you're alone, your anxiety when the internet lags, your fear of silence. They whisper in your shallow conversations, in your lowered self-worth, in the creeping feeling that you're always behind, no matter how much you scroll. You begin to live in fragments, moments sliced into posts, emotions filtered through emojis, thoughts interrupted by notifications. And over time, the fragmentation becomes permanent. You lose the thread of your own story. In ancient myths, losing one's name was the first step to losing one's soul. Today, we trade our identity for usernames. We don't ask, who am I? We ask, how am I perceived? The shift seems subtle, but it's seismic. When you live for the gaze of others, you become a mirror, reflecting trends, mimicking personas. And the real self, your unique, complex, flawed, powerful self, begins to erode. This erosion is slow, invisible, but devastating. Your values blur. Your sense of purpose fades. You start caring about things that never truly mattered and stop caring about the ones that do. And the scariest part? You don't even notice it happening. Neuroscience offers no comfort. Studies show that social media rewires your brain. It hijacks the dopamine system, the same reward pathway triggered by gambling, cocaine, or sugar. You become chemically dependent on the tiny bursts of pleasure, the ping of a notification, the red dot of attention, the likes that feel like love. But what starts as pleasure becomes prison. The more you seek those hits, the more your brain adapts. It lowers the baseline. What once excited you now barely registers. Real life, quiet, slow, uncertain, feels dull. And so you go back to the screen, not for joy but for relief. And that is the trap. Let's talk about the mind. One of the most overlooked casualties of social media addiction is your attention span. Attention is your most precious resource, not just because it helps you work or learn, but because it shapes your reality. You become what you pay attention to. If you constantly feed your mind fragments, chaos, distraction, you become fragmented, chaotic, distracted. The philosopher Simone Weil wrote, "Attention is the rarest and purest form of generosity, yet we squander it for memes, for outrage, for the latest controversy that will be forgotten by next week." This isn't just unhealthy, it's existentially dangerous. Because when you lose the ability to focus, you lose the ability to reflect. And when you can't reflect, you can't grow. You live reactively, not consciously. Your life becomes a sequence of impulses, not intentions. And slowly, you stop being the author of your own story. Then there's loneliness. We are more connected than ever before, yet more isolated than any generation in history. Why? Because connection isn't about frequency, it's about depth. And social media replaces depth with quantity. Likes instead of love, reactions instead of relationships, comments instead of conversation. You start to confuse visibility with intimacy. You have followers, but no one truly knows you. You are seen, but not held. Heard, but not understood. And that gnawing emptiness at the center of your chest? That's not boredom. That's the hunger for something real. Let's not forget the societal scale. This isn't just about you. An entire generation is being raised to think in algorithms, to filter their self-worth through engagement metrics, to believe that popularity equals value, and that speed equals truth. We no longer have time for nuance, for slow thinking, for philosophy, for complexity. Why read Dostoevsky when a 15-second reel can summarize it in a quote? Why wrestle with existential dread when you can laugh it off with a meme? We are training ourselves out of depth, and a society that loses depth loses wisdom. It loses resilience. It loses meaning. It becomes emotionally brittle, easily offended, constantly distracted, endlessly manipulated. And worst of all, it doesn't even know it's happening. The algorithm doesn't just show you what you like. It shows you what will keep you scrolling. It doesn't care about your truth. It cares about your time. And in chasing virality, relatability, and attention, we forget what it means to be truly human. We forget solitude. We forget contemplation. We forget silence. But silence is where insight lives, where creativity is born, where the soul speaks. And in the noise of social media, we lose the signal of our own soul. Maybe now you're starting to feel it. Not just the distraction, but the disintegration. The way your thoughts feel scattered. The way your days blur together. The way your dreams feel less vivid, less urgent. That isn't just mental fatigue. It's existential erosion. But it's not irreversible. Not yet. There is a rebellion waiting. A shift so radical, so powerful, it can feel like waking from a deep sleep. But it won't come from deleting your apps or taking a digital detox. That's like putting a bandage on a broken worldview. This addiction is not just behavioral, it's philosophical, it's spiritual, and the cure must go just as deep. In the next chapter, we will explore that rebellion, a way to take back your mind, your identity, your life. But be warned, this isn't an easy path. It requires confronting discomfort, facing your shadow, and reclaiming what modern life tries to bury. Ready to break the chains? Let's begin the rebellion. What if the very thing you crave, freedom, meaning, connection, is hiding behind the discomfort you keep avoiding? Because here's the truth most don't want to admit. You're not addicted to social media. You're addicted to escape. Escape from stillness. Escape from yourself. Escape from the terrifying quiet where you might actually hear your own thoughts. You say you're tired, distracted, lost. But maybe you're just disconnected from the only thing that ever truly mattered. Reality. Not the reality curated through filters. Not the one built from trends or reels. But the raw, unfiltered, imperfect one. The one where silence echoes. Where thoughts hurt. Where growth feels like death before it feels like rebirth. So how do you begin the rebellion? You stop outsourcing your consciousness. Right now, your mind isn't your own. It belongs to corporations whose sole goal is to predict and manipulate your behavior. You have to reclaim it. And the first step? Sit in silence. No music, no phone, no distractions. Just you and your mind. Feel the itch, the restlessness, the fear. That's your nervous system detoxing. That's your inner world reintroducing itself. Most people won't survive this first step because silence is a mirror and most don't like what they see. But if you stay long enough, a new clarity begins to emerge. You start to feel your own presence again. And that, right there, is the beginning of freedom. Now comes the difficult part. You must choose what to value. Because a mind without values is a mind easily hijacked. Nietzsche said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." But what's your why? Is it to be seen? To be liked? To keep up with the illusion of success? Or is it to live deeply, think freely, and feel fully, even when it's painful? You can't serve both masters. You either serve your truth, or the algorithm. And truth doesn't trend. Let's talk action. Not the weak kind, like digital detoxes that last 3 days before the relapse, but radical, structural change. 1. Design friction into your environment. Don't rely on willpower. Willpower fails. Systems don't. Make your phone boring. Remove addictive apps. Use grayscale. Disable notifications. Get a physical alarm clock. Keep the phone out of your bedroom. Yes, it sounds extreme, but so is the addiction. 2. Return to long-form content. Read books. Watch lectures. Listen to deep conversations. Train your brain to engage with complexity again. Because quick content is mental junk food. Keeps you fed, but never full. 3. Do hard things alone. Write without sharing. Think without tweeting. Experience something beautiful without documenting it. There is power in unshared moments. It reminds you, you don't need validation to exist. 4. Rebuild your identity around values, not visibility. Who are you when no one is watching? Who would you be if the internet disappeared tomorrow? That's your real self. Feed that. Grow that. Trust that. This is not just about changing habits. It's about reclaiming your mind from a manufactured culture. We live in a system designed to keep you numb. Because numb people don't resist. Numb people consume. Numb people obey. Your rebellion is to feel again. To choose discomfort over distraction. To build a life that's not just seen, but deeply lived. But let me be honest, This rebellion is lonely at first. You'll feel like you're missing out. Your friends won't understand. You'll scroll through less and think more. And thinking, real critical thinking, is uncomfortable. But soon, something strange happens. You begin to remember what it feels like to be human, to enjoy a sunset without photographing it, to sit with a book for hours, fully immersed, to have a conversation where no one looks at a screen, to notice the world again, its colors, sounds, textures. And you realize something the world forgot. Boredom is not the enemy. It's the doorway to creativity, to insight, to inner stillness, to the part of you that can never be touched by trends, metrics, or noise. Carl Jung spoke of individuation, the lifelong process of becoming who you truly are beyond societal masks. Breaking free from social media addiction is not just about escaping a habit. It's about claiming your right to individuate, to become whole, to confront your shadow, to step outside the collective hypnosis and finally see the machinery of illusion. You stop being a consumer of thought and become a thinker. You stop being a performer and become a person. And in that shift, your life begins again. The rebellion doesn't need a movement. It needs a moment. This moment, right now. Not tomorrow. Not after one more scroll. No. Close the app. Turn off the noise. Face yourself. What kind of life am I building? And for whom? If the answer isn't for me, then you already know what needs to be done. This isn't about deleting the internet. It's about reclaiming your relationship with it, to use it without being used, to engage without being enslaved, to connect without being consumed. That's what real rebellion looks like. And it starts the moment you stop asking for permission to think. What if the chaos outside was never the real problem? What if the endless scroll, the addiction, the anxiety, the need to be seen, were only symptoms, not of a broken society, but of a forgotten self? Because here is the most brutal, liberating truth you were never told. You are the algorithm, the infinite feed of dopamine, desire, distraction. It exists because you do. Your fears, your cravings, your need to matter. Social media didn't invent them. It just mirrored them back, pixel by pixel, swipe by swipe. The machine doesn't create your addiction. It reflects it. And in that reflection lies both the trap and the key. You weren't born addicted. You were born open, vulnerable, curious, deeply present. But slowly the world taught you to outsource your worth, to fear silence, to trade meaning for metrics, to believe that visibility equals value. And so the platforms didn't enslave you. They seduced you by offering what you thought you lacked: connection, belonging, significance. But all of it was a mirage, because no amount of likes can cure loneliness. No viral post can make you whole. No follower count can fill the aching void of a life lived on autopilot. Carl Jung once wrote, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls." Nowhere is this more visible than online. Every scroll is a tiny evasion. Every tap a retreat from reality. Every performance a mask to avoid the terrifying task of meeting yourself. But the ultimate truth is this: until you reclaim your inner world, the outer world will always control you. You'll always feel empty, always be chasing, always be one post away from feeling alive. And that's not living. That's a slow digital death. So what's the way out? Not detox, not balance, not even mindful scrolling. The only way out is awakening. A shift so deep, so irreversible, that the old you, the one who needed constant stimulation, no longer exists. This is not a fix. It's a rebirth. And rebirth is painful. You'll grieve your old self, the distracted self, the performative self, the self addicted to validation. You'll feel the emptiness you've spent years avoiding. You'll see the patterns, how easily you were manipulated, how deeply you betrayed yourself for attention. But beyond that grief is power. Because in the ashes of illusion, you discover something extraordinary. You were never broken. You were just buried. Under noise, under fear, under 1,000 versions of yourself that were never really you. Fyodor Dostoevsky said, "The mystery of human existence lies not in just staying alive, but in finding something to live for." So here's the question that changes everything. What are you living for? If it's likes and views and validation, you'll suffer endlessly. But if it's truth, depth, love, freedom, service, art, connection, real connection, then you no longer need the algorithm to feel alive. You become alive, not because of what the world sees, but because of what you see: the sky, the trees, the breath in your lungs, the stillness inside you that was always there, waiting for you to stop running, to stop scrolling, to stop performing, waiting for you to wake up. And once you wake up, you can never go back. You no longer fear silence. You crave it. You no longer need applause. You follow your truth, loudly or quietly, but always authentically. You stop seeking attention and start paying attention to life, to people, to yourself. You stop measuring your worth by visibility and start experiencing your value in how deeply you can love, feel, think, and create. This is not self-improvement. It's self-remembrance, because the truest version of you was never lost, only hidden, and now you found it again. So here we are, at the end, but also the beginning of a life where you are no longer at the mercy of the feed, where your time is sacred, where your attention is currency, and you spend it wisely. The beginning of a life where you own your mind, your thoughts, your voice, your presence, where you create instead of consume, connect instead of perform, feel instead of escape, where you live, not as a brand, but as a soul. Now, one last truth: most people will not wake up. They will scroll past this. They will feel the pull of truth, and then run back to the comfort of noise. But not you. Because if you've made it here, something inside you is already changing, already remembering, already rebelling. So let this moment mark the end of your addiction and the beginning of your awakening. No more numbing, no more escaping, no more feeding a system that profits from your emptiness. It's time to feel, time to think, time to live, fully, freely. Finally, welcome back.